Hi, I'm Beau Humphreys, and this is the Personal Finance Show. It is May 17th, 2020. I'm doing live-ish shows now because I don't have time to edit. That's really the reason. But also, I'm back because of this pandemic that we're in, and I want to do shows and publish them on the same day so that we can be in touch with everybody as it's going on. It's not one of those things that this is an evergreen personal finance story, which I would normally be recording that we could listen to 5 years from now. You might be listening to this 5 years from now out of curiosity, but in terms of its ability to connect with people and see what's happening around the world, this is this is for now. So I came out of sabbatical after 100 shows and started doing this every week. Also, check out the other show that I'm on called Dear Ruby with my friend Rubina Ahmed Haq. We talk about all of the same things. We're going to talk about the benefits in Canada, and it's really focused on Canadians. Meanwhile, in this series, I'm reaching out to people I know all around the world. And today, I have my cousin Jay, who is in Germany. Welcome, Jay.
Hey, hello there. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I love what you're doing here. I love that you're getting different perspectives from all over the globe because we often get too centered on what we know in our own little bubble and read whatever's in the media, and it's good to hear it firsthand what is actually happening out there.
Yes, this is precisely what it's what I try to do on the regular show is to give different perspectives, different stories, so people can relate. You're it's funny. You're not German, but well, you are. Wait, are you German in
Well,
background? I forget.
Swiss German. Swiss German is
Yeah, so that's your heritage, but
yes.
you weren't born in Germany.
Yep.
But you're living there now. You were born in the States, right?
Yeah, so I was born in Ohio and lived most of my life there. Moved to New York City, San Francisco, and then had the chance to transfer over to Amsterdam, of all places. And that's joined in 2012. I think it was when we first came over in January 2012. And you just have to start learning the European perspective on things. We moved then after about 3.5 years. We moved to London, and we were there for 2 years. And then I got this gig in Berlin, and thought, hey, why not? Berlin's a pretty cool spot. It's kind of the hub of startup community for Europe, and so came with a pretty big company. It's about a 10,000 person company, so it's not a startup at all. But the things are quite different in Germany. And we'll talk a bit about the kind of regulation and boxes that are established here, both socially and financially, that really make it quite different from any other country in Europe.
And so, yeah, I want to comment on so many things you just said, but so your company is Here Technologies, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So here technologies, it's in 80% of the cars on the road, it's the navigation system. There's some sort, whether it's the map itself or some of the location intelligence, it's one of the largest mapping companies in the world next to Google and TomTom and Apple and Esri.
So you like, would it be right to describe you as a direct competitor to Google Maps then?
Yes. Yes, you would be correct in saying that.
Okay, yeah. So big company, not like you said, not a startup in that it's a huge size, but a startup in that it's not a 100-year-old bank, right?
Yeah, well, it's been around for 50 odd years. Started in Navtech in the States, and it's been kind of
Okay.
yeah. So it was bought by Microsoft for a while. It was Nokia for a while, Nokia Maps, and then it was bought out by the OEMs. And this will be a good point. So we're basically owned over 50% by the major German OEMs, and now probably in end of May or beginning of June, we'll also ink the deal on Mitsubishi Corporation. So that's another massive international automotive manufacturer. And you can imagine over the past couple months what has happened in those industries, or that industry specifically, and all the supporting industries around it, especially here in the heartbeat of it, which is Germany. It has given us pause for sure as a company. And so we've had to react to that pretty swiftly and justly.
Yes. So yeah, I want to get to how your work specifically. Can you just tell us what OEM is, just
Oh,
briefly?
sorry. Yes, it's original equipment manufacturer, and it's kind of the catch-all phrase when you're talking about automotive. And so it is BMW, Daimler, Chrysler, Ford, all those, and the top three in Germany are our owners. And they pump this economy. 70% of this economy is automotive, and all the things that support it, from Siemens and um, you know just a ton of companies here. Berlin,
All the big German names that we can recognize,
yeah.
basically.
The thing is that Berlin's a little bit of an odd bird because it has historically kept itself quite isolated, and it's only been recent that financially, even though it's the center of the government, financially it has been really a poor city, and it's they always say it's on the edge of a turnaround, but I think it is really now where some of the bigger companies, including the auto manufacturers, which haven't historically been in Berlin, they've been in Munich, they've been in Stuttgart, elsewhere. They are putting kind of their centers of innovation here in Berlin, which drives a different kind of culture here, and also builds on a different culture that exists in Berlin. So there's new money coming in that definitely hits the rents. That's what everyone talks about. You talk about that in most major cities, but Berlin hasn't really had to deal with 20% rent spikes every year. Over the past 5 years, it's really been that. And there's been a lot of legislation that have been proposed, and now finally they agreed on a 5-year rent stabilization. Not really stabilization; it's actually a rent pause. So you can see it all around town. Is that it changes what's being built and where it's being built and who's moving in, for sure.
Okay, and it's like, one of the things about you and Liz, Liz is my blood cousin, if you will, and you married into the family.
Blood.
Uh, Now we're blood now. Sounds really ominous, right?
Yeah,
You've always been willing to go where the actual I guess creative work is, in terms of your in terms of where the opportunities are for you.
yeah,
And that a lot of that has changed now. I just wanted to mention you so Amsterdam, we visited you there, and then we didn't get to visit you in England, but the last time that we saw you was in Berlin, when you had just been forced out of England,
that's right.
uh, a
Yeah,
little
God,
sooner than you wanted. So you're not inexperienced when it comes to having to adapt
yeah.
to things, but you're also big travelers. So I want to, like, how does that feel to, like, would you still be going different countries every weekend as lately?
Yeah, so, well, not lately. Of course, everything's locked down. Can't
No,
get
I
cross.
sorry, I mean before lately. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. In fact, our last trip was mid-March to back to London, and we
Yes.
we had we had a lot of angst over whether to go or not. It definitely is now decided upon that March 12th was a pivot point in the UK for Corona, and so we were unfortunately right there. But it is part of our just who we are, defining
Yeah.
ourselves as explorers here, and having the opportunity, and through Liz. Liz is a writer and an editor for some large travel magazines and books, North America Books, you might know of, and so that has been the way we've explored Europe and the world, is through her lens, um, and all these, the travel industry, how it's grown over the past 10 or 15 years, and really accelerated the new building of hotels, and how areas or regions or cities are really based on tourism economy, and it that's all paused for the moment. And what comes out the other side is under great dispute right now, and therefore, what she's writing about, and what how she has promoted people to travel in the past is got to be different, and that's definitely affected our now. We're very itchy about wanting to go someplace right now. I have dreams about it every night. Hudson, our son, who's 4 years old, says, "I want to go to the airport. I want to go to the airport. I want to go to a hotel
he
room."
he
And
knows nothing but this, right? He does not know a life without travel. I I can't imagine, right? Because a lot of people are like, you're the opposite of what most people will do with a new kid is, sort of they usually hunker down and but you started right from the beginning,
Yeah.
taking him everywhere.
170 hotels around there, which leads to about 350 flights. His footprint, his carbon footprint is larger than most small countries.
Seriously.
I'm
No,
not
I'm
proud of it either. I'm just saying that it is something that is going to shape him, hopefully.
well,
And
that's
and
you. This is the way you were living, and he came into that life, right? That's it's not you're not doing this specifically for him. This is just how you live,
yeah,
right? And that's we shouldn't change the way we live. I mean, you probably have this philosophy too. You shouldn't change the way we live for children, right? We
that's
should
right.
incorporate them into the life that we have, right?
Agreed.
Um, Now, you can decide. Would you want me to put a link to his Instagram account or no? Is
Yeah,
that
that
private? Is that private?
no, it's not.
So it's Hudson and Hotels, right?
That's correct. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Is that the tag too? Is that the username?
that is correct.
So
Hashtag
I'll put
Hudson.
that in if you want to see photos of for the last three and a half years or so, or more, from the beginning. Well, you probably didn't travel right away, did you? I
2 months.
forget.
He was 2 months
Two
old.
months.
He went to Italy and saw some art on a lake in Italy after the first 2 months.
Awesome. So yeah, that's great. Just because it's a perfect. You can see all the places that he's been, give or take, right?
Yep.
So it just sort of it's a good representative of the life that you've been living, and so people can understand what you mean when you say you're itching. And it's not just like everybody who's like, oh, I want to be able to go on my annual vacation. It's very different for you and Liz, right? And then Liz, of course, needs to go places to be able to write about them, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
that has been her principles all through it. There's a lot of writers out there who just don't travel, they don't go places. They rely on TripAdvisor or whatever to get their resource. That's their
okay.
resource online, and so she
Oh,
feels that it is kind of cheating the system if you're doing that. And so having the ability to travel to Lake Como, why not do that? When it's 45 minutes away or an hour away by a flight, and be there and really see what it is. So you get a firsthand. You can really convey exactly what it is. And so that is, I think, also challenging moving forward. Is how does the travel industry, with curtailed budgets and curtailed flights, and how do people get real insight into what's happening there? So it's going to rely a lot on locals, and it can probably a different voice in how travel
that's
industry.
really interesting idea, right? Because like you said, there's going to be pivoting there. But yeah, is it her connecting with somebody local and then getting it's like getting the reports. It's like having a virtual you there. So that you're saying that's a possibility of the way that it's going to go. But also maybe your technology, and future, say, virtual reality or augmented reality technology could come into play too, where maybe we could go and experience things in the future. Yeah.
True, 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 true. Yeah, all this stuff, the technology thing, technology thing. Well, you saw it immediately after the kind of the spike in COVID excitement 2 months ago. That most companies they just jumped all over it and said, "Hey, let's just do hackathons. Let's take our technology, our core technology, and see how we can do good for this moment of Corona." And for us, it was we're about locations. It's about contact tracing. It's about local deliveries and transport and logistics and all these things that came to bear when Corona hit. We said, all right, let's get hundreds of people or thousands of developers and put their brains to it and do these hackathons. And then we were one of dozens, if not tens of dozens, of these hackathons that immediately happened right then. And what we've seen come out of it is, obviously a kind of a natural filtering of ideas and what's going to really hit in the market. But it also is starting to really it's starting to pivot towards the future. Like, so transport and logistics, for instance, kind of this no touch delivery stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and also how do you enable not just the DHLs of the world or the or the FedExes of the world, but you enable kind of maybe smaller communities of delivery, matching goods and services with individuals who can't be as mobile as they were in the past. And so, we're starting to look at that and say, well, okay, that's going to be 6 months from now, 18 months from now, 2 years from now. And we're starting to plan for that now. So we're already starting as a company, starting to pivot for what the future is, even though we're so far from being out of this. I think businesses are trying to be as resilient as possible in this time.
So on that note, but I do want to go back. I want to come back to where you are with your work and personal finances. But I do want to know, where were you when all the lockdown happened? Were you back in Germany?
Yes.
Okay, so you were back home, and then how did that go? Are you still going into work, or are you working remotely?
No, so we had a slow. I think it probably happened in most countries, right? It just kind of like you get a first report, you get a second report, you get the possibility of a lockdown, and then all of a sudden on March 20th they say, okay, no one goes anywhere. Now the thing is that Germany, federal system, right? So they have this at the country level. They give a mandate, and then all 16 or 17 different states say, well, we can adapt it the way we need to. Some, like Munich, were super strict, right? Immediately lockdown, immediately saying,
Okay.
only 1 hour a day can you go out and do this, this, and this. All businesses shut,
Wow.
right? Whereas Berlin was like, we recommend that you do this and do that. It was really, I mean, it is what Berlin is like, people are very
Yeah.
anti-establishment. They're very much like, go and spray paint your name somewhere, to show who you are. And so these things there was no like hard hammer. The only thing was like, when businesses shut, schools shut first, for sure. So the first thing was for our kid he's going to Kita, which is really daycare. It's not really kindergarten. They go there from 6 months until 6 years, and then they go
Okay.
to first grade. So Kita is shut down because they're just snot factories, right? They're just like, that's where, if things are going to swirl around and go back home, it's going to be with these little carriers, these super spreaders. And so that shut down first. And then businesses, some businesses, not all, because our company still has we have a campus of about 1,000 people, and we have 5 buildings, and they still have 1 building open that you can go to, and they've had it open the whole time, extra cleaning. But once the company made remote happen, or kind of the default, everyone took advantage of that, and so you really only had like literally half a dozen people in our office who would come in because they didn't have any other opportunity, right? They're not, we are fortunate to have an extra room, but some people don't have extra rooms where their kids aren't screaming, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of privilege being talked about these days where someone might post, well, just, if someone has COVID in the house, just put them in the extra bedroom with the extra bathroom, and everyone's like minds are exploding, like, what? Like, where is that in my bachelor apartment, right, where the two of us live? So it is good to acknowledge that not everybody, even like you said, in your company even, which I'm assuming pays well, they just don't live that way. They don't necessarily live in a larger place for whatever reason, right?
Yep. Yeah, and so immediately the remote thing. Oh, I have to also preface that because our company is in 120 countries, sales teams here, sales teams there, we have been a lot remote, right? We've done a lot of our work now, and so it was more about formalizing that and finding tools and stuff that work better. Not necessarily Zoom, but relying more on WebEx, and we're doing this thing called Miro, which is more of a collaborative work board. So those kind of things came into play much quicker. And probably by the beginning of April, we were rolling along pretty well as a company. Now, what I found is that there was an immediate panic of like people trying to figure out their work-life balance, and the kids are at home, and then it kind of plateaued, and people are like, okay, I got this. And what I'm finding now, which is 2 months in, that people are going through another kind of moment of crisis, right? They're like, how long is this going to go on? And what was working last week is not working today. Like whether their cadence or something is changing. I'm having a lot more of my employees come in saying, I've got to change. I've got to work late at night, or I've got to like switch off with my wife or something. There's just a different type of stress that is coming in, that's compressing things a little bit.
Yeah, I've already had conversation, preliminary conversations because, Kayla's back in virtual med school, right? They pulled her out of the clinical setting at the same day the daycare was ended. So that the timing worked out well. And then they had a little bit of a break, but then they figured out how to do it online. And her workload is still quite heavy. She can move things around, but there are times when she has to do an exam or this or that where I need to be able to move my counseling appointments. I chose a job where I meet with people all day, so it's not they're all scheduled appointments and they're mandatory appointments that we have to check off and file with the government. So it's not something that can be like, okay, let's I'll do it when I have time at 10 p.m. Right.
Yeah.
So I have a less flexible thing, and so yeah, I mean, a good manager, as I believe, without knowing that you are, has to be ready to adapt to this kind of thing, and at least just listen and understand that this is not like any other time, right?
No.
This is not, and as you said, the more people are in this situation, the more they're like, okay, I could do this for a month or two, but if I had to do this forever, something's going to have to give. And then the situations change. Like, as for example, in your case, I'm imagining the childcare falls over to Liz because you are working all day. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Like, so primary childcare would go to her. What do you think? But back and forth because you have flexibility.
Back and forth, and we actually do employ. We have a nanny for a few hours a day, so
Okay.
we do have a window of where we have someone come in 5 days a week to help out with us. So Liz can still, and Liz is still. I have to say, Liz is still. She still has travel work, believe it or not.
She's still working.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
good.
some of her things have stopped. They stopped immediately. Others, like she's writing a new guidebook for Amsterdam, and then she just that to stop, but it hasn't stopped. So that continues on. They hopefully will continue to pay her for it.
Okay, so that's a good time to pivot into that then. So she's still actually getting paid, which is good, but in her situation, there's a lot of unknowns about the future.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's I mean, she got this Amsterdam gig just as things started to shut down, so they kind of continued on with it. She had one that she got after it for Italy that was, then a week later they called her back and said, sorry, we're cutting all the Italy stuff.
All Italy stuff, sure.
Because I think they're trying to look at how countries are going to come out of it. Italy is, as they announced today, they're going to start opening up business for tourism, but only internal tourism, not for international tourism. So you still don't know when the stuff is going to be applicable, and when it comes out, you might have to rewrite half the stuff anyways, because some of the restaurants or most of the hotels it's going to be a different landscape for sure. So she's got to kind of track with that pretty quickly.
So we in January or so, we booked our first international trip with Henry and his cousin Lydia, who are just about the same age, to Italy in August. So, I mean, I don't know. Well, what's your vibe on that?
I think that they're coming out of it, right? They're coming out of it slowly, and they were hit so hard in the north, in Como, in Milan, but places like Venice. I just read about Venice, how they're going to kind of try to reshape the city, as they've wanted to do for a long time, because they can't, stand 30 million tourism numbers a year. They can't have all the boats floating in, which we have no idea whether they're going to come back. So you're going to see a different Italy, but I think it'll be open by then.
Yeah, you think so? Because we're flying into Venice.
Yep.
That's where we're going, and then we're going to go up into the Alps. That's the idea. We'll see. It really depends on how they. Maybe it's more about air travel and the safety of that as well, too. Like, we're going to have to consider so many things. Even if they're open, we all will have to make a personal decision as well.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. That's another thing that's come up lately is, sure, government can say this or that and open everything, but everyone has personal decisions to make. How would you? Because there's also laws too that say in certain countries, depending, that you cannot refuse to go back to work unless it's like actually detrimental to your safety, and you can prove that. Or if you have mitigating circumstances that qualify under whatever the rules are.
Yeah.
So you can't, like, a personal preference is not necessarily going to keep you from going back to the office. How would you address that kind of situation on a case by case basis, I guess?
Well, first of all, you have to think of this. So in Germany, it's workers' rights.
Yeah,
So
okay. So they come first. Yeah.
we have a works council, which is extremely strong. One might say it's a union, but it is an entity that literally reviews every policy, every decision that the company makes, if it has any sort of effect, positive or negative, on potential on an employee. And so they are in negotiations for all of this stuff around when
Mm.
you return, if you return, if you open up the office, what does the office look like? How are you going to adhere to the restrictions that the government puts ahead? And again, I think in other parts of Germany, you have much more oversight and kind of strict governance by the government. In Berlin, it's a little looser. I don't think they're going to be walking into businesses and checking if you're 6 feet away from each other, 2 meters away from each other, meter and a half, sorry. Um, but but then again, I see in a nice way, they're walking down the street here. We've got lots of businesses on our street, small businesses. And when they said small businesses, you can reopen, you can have your windows open and you can serve food outside of it, or you can allow patrons inside, but you have to limit it to the amount of people who you have carts, and only one person per cart. And so some really good guidelines. And so you also see the police walk down and kind of ensure that it's happening. Now, it's not to give them fines. I'm finding, because I talk to the local people here. They're not here to fine them. They're here to just guide them and say, listen,
Yeah.
if you don't adhere to this down the road, we might have to shut you down. But for now, let's figure out how you can survive this. And so they really helped them kind of set up the tape lines and like close this window, open this window. And it's really about guidance, which I found really refreshing, that the police take this under their wing to kind of really help the community out that way.
That is really nice. And on that same note, so Germany is really about helping the country as a whole, and preparing for things like that. And so you are about to start on what is I guess considered German employment insurance. Is it kind of the equivalent?
Well, it is. So okay, there's a number of
subsidy.
There's a number of things that they're doing in order to mitigate the situation. So immediately, because it's a huge freelancer population, huge small business population,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically, the city of Berlin said, we've got a pot of money. If you are a small business or freelancer, you're going to be affected by this. Sign up immediately. And I think they had 250,000 people sign up immediately. They only had 150,000 set aside, or numbers of that amount set aside. But those people got it within 48 hours. And then they within a week, they were out of that money. But
Okay.
the federal government also had another pot where you, as a small business, and it was mainly focused towards small businesses, not individuals, you had up to X amount of euros that you can get, 15,000 immediately. And then you could, I think there were 2 or 3 other steps that you could get 20, 40, or something more like that. But immediately, because Liz, her contracts went down by a third, she signed up as a freelancer, a small business, towards the federal government. And so she immediately got that within.
Oh, that's so great.
Or so, but you didn't have to take the full amount. So she took only 5K out, and because this all goes towards you still have to pay taxes on it. You have to eventually, it's part of your income, right? But it will help immediately kind of hit what is necessary now, kind of the immediate loss. So that was first of kind of this, how do you help out immediately some of the small businesses? That was in beginning of April.
Okay.
And then there's this government thing called Kurzarbeit, which is companies can reduce the work hours of the company or parts of the company, not individuals, I found out. You have to do it at of teams is probably the smallest atomic level that you can get at. No individual. So companies like here say we're going to reduce everybody in Germany, 1,000. Well, it's about 2,000 people in Germany by 20%. That'll be a savings, and then the government then subsidize the remainder of that. So, for instance, I'm making 100,000 euros, let's say, and I get 20% of that cut. I apply to the government, and they'll pay back up to 67% of that missing money.
Okay.
They subsidize some of that back into my pocket.
So you're in the 90% area, give or take, like between 90 and 100, however that works out.
Yep, and you get
so yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Now, challenge is that at a certain level, certain pay grade, which is, let's say, senior level 15 years or more, 15 to 20 years experience, you hit the ceiling, and then they don't pay that subsidy.
Yes.
So for me, I'm above that, which isn't that high, by the way. And the pay is pretty low in Berlin overall.
In say U.S. capitalism terms, right? If you're,
it's very low, and so there's not a lot of people who hit above that, but I'm above it, and so I don't get any subsidy. So basically, I get a 20% cut of my pay starting next Friday.
Okay, and so again, we should acknowledge there's privilege here, but also you have built a life around this income, right? As well.
Yep.
But on top of that, are you saving lots of money by not traveling?
This is an interesting point because Liz, based on the way she travels, she gets a lot of stuff complimentary, just simply because.
I guess so, yeah. Okay.
Right? So, yes, we are saving money, but not huge amounts of money. The amount that we travel and the amount that we have to pay for it is not in balance, right?
Interesting.
So so it's not like we're all of a sudden flush with 25 more into our savings account or anything.
And it's also a lot less expensive to travel within the EU when you're in it, right?
Yes.
Than it is for us to get there, and all that kind of stuff too. So basically, are you having to just sort of revisit your finances a little bit just for the short term?
Definitely, and it's I think what we're also seeing is a bit of inflation. That's immediate inflation when it comes to staples around here. So fruit and vegetables, I definitely have seen gone up 20%.
Okay, wow.
Kind of the standard stuff that have flown off the shelves here. I haven't really noticed in the big grocery stores whether I could compare whether it's gone up 15 cents here or 25 cents here. But I definitely see that businesses that I frequent here that they've repriced everything and definitely fruit and vegetables and milk have gone up €1 or even €2 in the past couple of weeks. So all of our expenses are rising just a little bit, right? And that's some concern too, for sure, of how we're going to do that. The rent's not going to go up. I know that in the next 4 years, which is good to know.
It's nice to know. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that again, you said privilege. I think we're in a good spot where we're very grateful of and stable, right? One of the challenges we have here is we have no good savings vehicle. We can't put money or invest into European stocks. Any kind of the retirement plans. And if we do, we have to take it out at great penalty and move it over to the States. So we don't. Since we've been in Europe, we've actually lost a lot when it comes to not being able to put stuff in 401k. Not having good investment vehicles
and growth potential for that. Yeah.
And so I can't, what we had in the States and what we could have grown in the States and invested with in the States is we just kind of write that off as, oh, well, we're having a great experience here. We can't, we can't balance that out and say, oh my gosh, we're losing so much money. No, because we're experiencing Europe in a way that not many people have the ability to do. And yeah, we're going to go back to the U.S. poor, but
But that's but you're mostly talking about losing potential growth and not actually losing money, right?
correct. That's correct.
Yeah. So the potential that you could have had to say have an earlier retirement if you would have stayed in, I remember when you were looking for work, you were considering, say, LA or New York, even possibilities or some jobs that might have been available there too, right? And
Yep.
that might have accelerated your ability to, if you would have had 401k matching or anything like that, and being able to invest more of your money as opposed to, like I said, Germany is a social country, right? So do most people rely on Social Security when they're older, or is there less of a retirement savings mentality?
No, it's huge, huge social retirement. So everyone expects that they're going to be
They're just going to
set
take care of.
or take care of. One thing that I have to take note of, and most people don't consider that, is that the healthcare is quite expensive here, on top of what
Mm,
they take out of. So I get
okay,
about
really?
47% for taxes taken out of my pay,
Yeah, high
and then
taxes. Yeah.
on top of that, I pay more for healthcare. And then Liz, because she's a freelancer, pays more on top of that. So she overall is paying about 55% of her wage towards the government. And that's
Okay.
it's pretty hard here. And not for that much benefit, honestly. What you look for is it's long-term benefit. Like you said, it's the social structure that allows for you not to worry about big challenges in your life. One of them being, getting major sickness, to retirement as a major life change, and you don't have to worry about that so much. That you're going to be taken care of. But that's
But
not.
but how does that work for expats? Yes, is that what you're
Yeah,
just saying? That
yeah,
doesn't apply to you.
no, I mean, in a few years we could become residents. I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
we get our permit, and so therefore we can get some of these benefits. So we could live here, we could live out our lives, and eventually, get a German residency and a passport, and get rid of our U.S. passport and our Canadian passports, um, and take advantage of this. But that's not who we are either. We're going to move again, and we're
Yeah.
going to not be able to take advantage of what we're putting into the pot.
So it's a very interesting analysis, right? Because yeah, I've spoken to German citizens in the past. One who was an anonymous blogger and moved to Australia because she could not achieve financial independence in Germany. It's not set up that way, as we just talked about.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's fantastic that they take care of the people and you never have to worry about anything. It's almost like you're guaranteed universal basic income across the board, right?
yeah,
If you can't work, you get unemployment. But there is a lack of opportunity for high growth, and you are someone who is always focused on growth, right? and right and not even just financially, right? That's
yeah,
your skill set is growing things and changing things, and so that it's you're in a country that does not allow for that so much, but also in a city that allows for the creative opportunities and creative growth and things like that. So it's kind of there's a lot of the pros and cons to where you are, right?
yeah, absolutely. But one thing that we definitely saw very quickly is that people don't move here to your point of to challenge themselves to say, I'm going to come here and make it's not the New York City mentality, right?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
I win in Berlin, I can win anywhere kind of thing. It's not, man, if I can just chill out on the couch for a few months,
That's
that's
it.
right, and get paid and still get some money from the government, and not seem like they're not outcasts here. They're here to add to that creative layer. And if it takes them 6 months, they'll take that artist visa and they'll turn that around and they'll build something mediocre and add to the city's juice, right? But they're not here to be like the best, and that also is a challenge for us because we've lived in San Francisco and New York and London, and that's a different mentality, right? And Berlin is not that. And the financial system and social structure is set up in a way that that's not why people move here at all.
It's Bohemia,
It is,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, like that. Whenever somebody, like, if you think of La Vie Boheme, right? That's the idea is, right? You go and you live in a cheap loft, and you're good, right? And you can be creative, and you don't have to worry so much, about every day is a grind.
yeah.
And yeah, that is good for, like you said, this is a great experience in your life, not something you plan on doing for the rest of your life.
No, not at all.
But you're in the you're in the technological progress part of that, within Bohemia, which is also very interesting. To have that superimposed. So, uh, but you have the apartment and it's still in New York.
We do, we do. We just
Yeah,
renegotiating that that rent. That
yeah.
keeps
Any
going.
challenges? What's the current challenge with that in the pandemic?
That our subletters don't want to pay anymore. We have to raise the rent because our landlord has raised the rent, but they don't want to.
Okay.
And so how do you
Mm,
go back? We've even gone back to our landlord and said, "Hey, here's the situation. This guy works at a hospital. He's not quite sure what's going to happen. Da da da." And the landlord's like, "Listen, I'm not categorized as a small business. I don't get any government support in this moment." And so therefore I'm getting hit just as hard as anybody else. So I can reduce your rent for a couple months, but I can't do it permanently. And so that's a challenge for us. We want to hold
having
on
to
and have something to go back to in New York. It kind of glues us to New York a little bit. But we're,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know how much longer we can do it.
And that's again other challenges where with people where something could have been managed maybe quite easily before. Things are just coming up like this, right? If somebody was Airbnbing, which you were doing at some point maybe in the past, or did you ever actually even settle on doing that ever?
Yeah, we did it. We did it for about a year, and it was the worst experience ever to be a Airbnb owner.
Right. And so imagine if you were in that situation where you were still doing that and that dried up. Now you're having to still cover the rent on this, right?
Yeah,
um while getting a 20% pay cut, right? Even acknowledging privilege and all this, we all set up lives that we don't expect to change by 40%, let's say, all at once. So no matter, whether it's basic survival or whatever, there's always an adjustment period that we would expect if something were to change that's that huge. So, we can speak in relativity, but if everyone is affected by
yeah,
this in
yeah.
whatever way or another, right? It's about, we didn't have the time to make arrangements for a lot of these things that happened.
Yeah, and like you said, are lucky to have a bit of a comfort zone um, that allows us to have choice, and that many
Yes.
people just don't have. Whether it's here or New York or middle of the country or around the globe, we have a lot of choice still. Um, it's just we have to, as many people do, we have to start looking long term, and these crises while we have to look at every day and how we're going to get through, childcare and how am I going to get out to the grocery store and get my hair cut and all these things, but we really have to turn our eyes towards the longer term and see how we come out of this in a different way. And do we need the money and need the growth that we expected before? Is capitalism the way of the world? Is that machine really at this moment broken, or are we going to go back into the same groove that we were before?
it's it,
Well,
it's
I do.
I'm
It's
seeing on Twitter a lot is everyone's talking about let's go back to normal, and then they go on and list all of the normal things that we did which were terrible.
yeah,
So yeah, do we want to go back to a lot of the things that led to people being in the situation where paycheck to paycheck this has destroyed them, right? And people who are highly leveraged took out a home equity line of credits on their first residence to get an Airbnb rental, and now they're decimated.
Yeah.
Do we want to go back to that, or is this going to teach us to, Berlin's got not a bad idea going on there, right? Let's take care of our own, right?
Yeah.
The concept of universal basic income is coming up a lot, especially when talking about the U.S. And it's like spend $1 trillion to send people $1,200, which might help them for a month or even half a month. We're not going to go ahead and comment on that because, of course, I'm terrible at talking about politics. But it's just, just to think about the options out there, and this is all just jogging. Hopefully, a lot of people are thinking more about planning for the future. I'm a big fan of mindfulness and power of now and things like that. But when it comes to money, we have to think a little bit about the future, at least, right? And this is waking that up in a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's those areas that keep coming back around, universal healthcare and understanding that, a big hit on your health isn't going to be a big hit on your family financially, like a huge burden. Childcare, I think, is huge. I mean, these are things that we are very close to right now, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
countries like Germany have. While I don't agree with a lot of the ways that they have it, structured or unstructured, as it will. Not getting a kid into first grade until 6, things like that. It's still a U.S. mindset for me. I'm like, go, 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 go.
Mm-hmm.
Kid needs to start reading.
Yeah,
But at the same
that's
time,
right.
they like it. They support their kids and they support their families and they support single mothers and they, that there's not the stress that comes along with having a kid. I mean, it's still there, but it's not so overwhelming that that's all you can think about is how am I going to feed my kid tomorrow? It doesn't
That's
happen.
right.
It doesn't happen.
So yeah, maybe there'll be a more of a global shift to, sort of the midway where Canada is. We're kind of a good balance. I feel sometimes when we look at the world, right? Like
Yeah.
the social limitations of Germany and the capitalistic side of the U.S. with no free healthcare. There's the balance is not a bad thing, and it, we yeah, it's extremes always sort of lead us to a certain place, right? Communism and capitalism in their true forms tend to have a lot of negative consequences for some, but they help, in terms of the communist or the socialist bit, they help in situations like this, right? Like that's one of the reasons why China got hold of everything so quickly, right? Because everybody has to do what they're told.
Exactly.
um,
Yeah, it works.
yeah, right. I mean, the obviously there's pros and cons to all this, but you can see the two sides of it. It's like we're having this is a global experiment right now, really, isn't it?
I don't even say it. It's funny because we talk about globalism, but I think it's much more a local experiment of
Mm,
how these little entities can survive and thrive, and like what are the commonalities of this community that I live in called Prenzlauer Berg that can support local businesses and support the lifestyle of these type of people, and it's quite different from like a little community that's a little further east from here or further west from here, which is a little bit more commercial. So it really we start to see these microcosms and say how does this really work and how do we want it to work moving forward here at this local level. And even going back to travel, you hear a lot of people talking about, well, you know what, I'm going to take advantage of this time, this period that I can't travel to, you know I can't travel to New Zealand. I'm going to
yeah,
drive to Spreewald, or I'm going to go to the Alps. I'm going to, spend my summer within 200-kilometer radius of this place,
sure,
doing things and supporting the communities and seeing things that I haven't before. And maybe that changes the way people perceive where they live and how they love or don't love where they are, right? Like you said, at the moment, where am I, and how can I really explore that even more? So I think it's an extremely compelling moment for people to change their views on their local space, not just globalism.
well, I love that, and it's a perfect place to end this today. it's very inspiring, all right, because the world is repairing itself as we see, right? Because we're not the fossil fuels and everything that's happening is not like we're not polluting as much as we were, and we can see the effects, right? No one would have agreed to, hey, let's all take a couple of months off and see how the effect on the earth, but it's happened, and so yeah, more local with the option for global, but not trying to accelerate it at the price of the planet being destroyed. You know, there's a lot of interesting topics to discuss going forward, and how the new normal is going to come about. So, well, thanks so much for joining me today, Jay. I'm glad we could do this.
Yeah, I appreciate the call. I'm glad we had a chance to speak.
All right. So I will be back next week. As next week, I think we're going to have someone local to talk about all the alphabet soup of benefits in Canada, all of the different categories of benefits that we have that may or may not be helping. That maybe some people are still falling through the cracks. It's good to talk about those things, just to sort of, it's almost like a translation episode. What is this and who is it for? Do I qualify? How long is it going to last? Nobody knows with a lot of these things. So we'll find out. And but until next week, stay safe.